The Arctic wind howled through the desolate, frozen wasteland, its icy fingers clawing at the endless expanse of white. Snowflakes swirled in chaotic dances, their delicate beauty masking the brutal reality of survival in one of the harshest places on Earth. As you watch this gripping story unfold, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video with others. It helps us bring you more incredible wildlife stories like this. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, we love hearing from you. Far from any human settlement, amid the shifting glaciers and the treacherous sea ice, a tiny figure struggled against the elements. A polar bear cub, barely a few weeks old, stumbled through the snow, its fragile frame trembling from exhaustion. It let out a weak, pitiful cry, its voice barely audible against the roaring wind. There was no mother in sight. The cub's fur, which should have been a thick, insulating coat of white, was damp and clumped together, evidence that it had spent too long exposed to the harsh conditions. Its paws sank into the soft snow, leaving behind small, uneven tracks that zigzagged in confusion. The Arctic was no place for a lone cub. Without its mother, it was doomed. Somewhere in the distance, the deep, guttural growl of an adult polar bear echoed through the storm. The cub's ears perked up, and for a moment, hope flickered in its dark eyes. But the sound didn't belong to its mother. It belonged to a predator. A large male polar bear, or rogue loner, emerged from the swirling blizzard, his massive frame casting a shadow over the helpless cub. His powerful muscles rippled beneath his thick fur, and his black nose twitched, picking up the cub's scent. Male polar bears rarely tolerated cubs that weren't their own. To them, an abandoned cub was nothing more than an easy meal. The cub froze, its tiny body shaking uncontrollably as the enormous bear closed in. It let out a terrified whimper, instinctively curling into a small ball. The male bear lowered his head, sniffing the air again, inching closer. And then, a sound shattered the silence, A deep, rumbling crack beneath the ice. Both bears reacted instantly. The rogue male whipped his head around, his powerful claws digging into the snow as he braced himself. The cub, too small to understand what was happening, only shivered in confusion. Another deafening crack echoed through the frozen tundra. The ice was breaking. And before the rogue bear could react, it collapsed beneath him, The massive predator let out a furious roar as the ice gave way under his weight. His enormous body plunged into the dark, frigid waters below, sending a spray of frozen shards into the air. He thrashed wildly, his heavy fur now a curse as it soaked up the icy water, pulling him down. For a few breathless moments, the cub simply stared. The predator that had been moments away from ending its life was now fighting for his own. But in the Arctic, mercy was a luxury. The cub turned away and began to stumble forward once more. It was still alone. And the blizzard was far from over. The blizzard showed no mercy. The wind screamed across the ice, its invisible hands shoving the tiny polar bear cub with every step. Snow piled around its trembling legs, making each movement harder, slower. The Arctic had already claimed its mother, now it was coming for the cub. The cub's breath came in weak, ragged puffs, its energy draining with every passing second. It hadn't eaten in days. Its small belly, once round and full from its mother's milk, was now painfully hollow. The snow and ice blurred together in its vision. Everything felt the same, white, endless, merciless. Somewhere in its tiny mind, a fading instinct told the cub to keep going. To find shelter. To survive. But there was nowhere to go. The Arctic stretched in every direction, an infinite graveyard of ice. And then, a shadow moved in the distance, The cub blinked, its exhausted eyes struggling to focus. A dark shape loomed through the thick snowfall, standing tall against the white abyss. It wasn't a polar bear. It was something else. For the first time in its short life, the cub saw a creature unlike any it had ever known. A man. Wrapped in heavy fur-lined gear, his face hidden beneath layers of ice-crusted fabric, he stood still, watching the tiny bear struggle. His breath fogged in the freezing air. He shouldn't have been here. No human ventured this deep into the Arctic unless they had a death wish. ***. The cub's legs gave out. It collapsed onto the ice, too weak to move, its tiny chest rising and falling in shallow, desperate breaths. The man took a step forward. Then another. Slow. Cautious. ***. He had seen polar bears before. Big ones. Fierce ones. Hunters of the ice, ***, but never had he come across one this small, this fragile. A cub alone meant something terrible had happened. He knelt beside the tiny creature, his thick gloves brushing the snow from its fur. The cub barely reacted. It was slipping away. A decision had to be made. The man looked around, no sign of its mother. If she were anywhere near, she would have attacked by now. But there was nothing. Just the howling storm. He hesitated. This was not his fight. He was a researcher, a visitor to this frozen world. He had come to study the Arctic, not to interfere with it. But then he looked at the cub again. Its breaths were slowing. And in that moment, something inside him broke. He knew the laws of nature. But this wasn't just nature. This was suffering. ***. Without another thought, he reached into his pack and pulled out a thick, insulated wrap. Moving quickly, he lifted the cub, wrapping it tightly against his chest. The cub barely had the strength to resist. The man turned, pushing through the storm. His snow boots crunched against the ice, each step carrying them away from the endless white. He didn't know if the cub would make it. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't leave it behind. The storm raged on as the man trudged through the Arctic wasteland, his arms wrapped tightly around the fragile cub. Every step was a battle, the wind lashed against him, trying to rip the warmth from his body. His breath came in harsh, icy gasps, fogging up the inside of his fur-lined hood. The cub, bundled inside his thick insulated wrap, barely moved. It was still alive, but only just. The man's name was Daniel Reeves. A field researcher from Alaska, he had spent years studying the effects of climate change on the Arctic. He had seen glaciers crumble, ice caps shrink, and polar bears struggle to find food. But nothing had prepared him for this. Alone, starving cub. Daniel's mind raced as he fought against the storm. How had it ended up alone? Had its mother been caught in the shifting ice? Had she been killed by a stronger male? Or had she simply abandoned her cub in a desperate attempt to survive? The thought made his chest tighten. He adjusted his grip, holding the cub closer, shielding it from the worst of the cold. He couldn't think about that now. He had to focus on getting them both to safety. ***. After what felt like an eternity, a dark silhouette emerged through the blizzard. ***. His outpost. ***. A small research cabin, half buried in snow, stood against the frozen wasteland. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Daniel reached the door, his fingers numb as he fumbled with the latch. The storm howled like a living beast behind him, trying to drag him back into the cold. He shoved the door open and stumbled inside, kicking it shut behind him. Silence. For a moment, all he could hear was his own breathing. The sudden warmth of the cabin felt almost unnatural after the relentless cold outside. He moved quickly, setting the cub down on a thick pile of blankets near the small heating unit. He unwrapped the insulated cloth, his heart pounding as he checked for movement. The cub was still. Too still. "No, no, no," Daniel muttered under his breath. He stripped off his heavy gloves and placed a hand against the cub's tiny chest. A heartbeat. Faint, but there. ***. Relief washed over him, but he knew the battle wasn't over. The cub was in a dangerous state, hypothermia was setting in. If it didn't warm up soon, it wouldn't make it. Thinking fast, Daniel grabbed a dry towel and began rubbing the cub's fur, trying to generate heat. Its tiny body was stiff, unresponsive. He reached for his thermos, pouring a few drops of warm water onto his fingers and gently dabbing them against the cub's lips. Nothing. "Come on, little one," he whispered. "Fight." A long, agonizing second passed. Then another. And then, the cub's mouth twitched, Daniel's breath caught. It moved. Slowly, painfully, the cub's tiny tongue flicked out, tasting the water. Then, weakly, it swallowed. A surge of hope shot through him. It wasn't over yet. He continued his work, rubbing the cub's fur, coaxing tiny sips of warm water onto its tongue. Minute by minute, he saw a change. The shivering returned first, a good sign. Then, a soft, ragged breath. And finally, after what felt like hours, the cub let out the faintest, weakest whimper. Daniel smiled for the first time that night. "You're a fighter," he murmured. But even as the cub clung to life, Daniel knew their fight wasn't over. Because outside, in the endless Arctic night, something was watching. And it was getting closer. The Arctic night was eerily quiet. Outside the small cabin, the wind had died down, but Daniel knew better than to trust the silence. Out here, quiet didn't mean safety. It meant something was lurking, ***. Inside, the cub had finally warmed up. It was no longer limp, though it remained weak. Every few minutes, its small body trembled as if trying to wake from a long, frozen nightmare. Daniel sat nearby, exhaustion pressing down on him, but his mind refused to rest. He couldn't stop thinking about the cub's mother. What had happened to her? Was she alive? Could she be searching for her lost baby even now? Or worse, had she fallen victim to the cruel, changing Arctic? He rubbed his hands over his face, trying to clear his thoughts. He had to focus. The cub was alive, but it wouldn't survive much longer without proper care. It needed food. Daniel pushed himself up and rummaged through his supply packs. He had no formula, no proper milk for a cub, but he did have something, protein powder mixed with warm water. It wasn't ideal, but it might be enough to keep the cub alive for now. He filled a small dropper and brought it to the cub's lips. At first, nothing. Then, a slow response, a flicker of its tongue, a weak attempt to swallow. "That's it," Daniel whispered. "Just a little more." As the cub took in tiny drops of nourishment, Daniel finally allowed himself a moment of relief. He had done everything he could for now. Then, a sound, a faint crunch outside. His body went rigid. He turned toward the window, his breath catching in his throat. Something was out there. Slowly, he reached for his rifle, keeping his movements silent. The Arctic was full of dangers, rogue male bears, starving predators. And with the ice melting faster than ever, animals were becoming more desperate. He stepped closer to the window, careful not to make a sound. Through the frost-covered glass, he could barely make out a shadow moving through the snow. Big. Powerful. Too large to be anything but one thing, ***. A polar bear. Daniel's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Could it be? He swallowed hard. If this was the cub's mother, then he had just taken her baby. She would be furious, desperate to get it back. And an angry mother bear was the last thing he wanted outside his cabin. But something about the way the bear moved wasn't right. It was slow. Unsteady. Weak, ***. Daniel squinted through the darkness, his breath fogging the glass. The bear took another step forward, then stumbled, falling heavily onto the ice. His stomach twisted. The mother wasn't attacking. She was starving. For a moment, he hesitated, torn between logic and instinct. Stepping outside could mean death, but if he did nothing, this bear, this mother, wouldn't last the night. Daniel exhaled sharply, gripping the rifle tight in one hand and a flare in the other. If he went out there, it would change everything. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears as he stepped toward the door. His grip on the rifle was tight, but deep down, he knew the truth, ***. He didn't want to use it, ***. The mother bear lay motionless in the snow, her massive body rising and falling in slow, labored breaths. Even from inside the cabin, Daniel could see the stark outline of her ribs beneath her thick, matted fur. She was starving, dying. He swallowed hard. This was wrong. Polar bears were apex predators, built to survive the harshest conditions on Earth. Yet here she was, helpless against the cruel bite of starvation. The melting Arctic had stolen her home, her hunting grounds, and now, maybe even her life, Daniel reached for a flare, his mind racing. If he startled her, she might regain enough strength to move on, to hunt. If not. His stomach twisted. He glanced back at the cub, still weak but alive, its tiny body curled on the blankets. It had no idea how close it had come to death. Daniel exhaled and made his choice. Slowly, he unlatched the cabin door. A blast of cold slammed into him as he stepped outside, the rifle slung over his shoulder. The mother bear didn't react. She lay still, her breath fogging the air in slow, uneven gasps. Daniel crouched a safe distance away, reaching into his pack. He had food, but barely enough for himself, and yet, as he looked at the bear, he knew there was only one choice. He pulled out a frozen fish from his emergency rations and tossed it forward. The bear didn't move. Daniel's chest tightened. Was he too late? Then, a flicker of movement. The bear's massive head lifted slightly, nostrils flaring weakly at the scent of food. She shifted, muscles trembling from exhaustion, before dragging herself forward. Daniel stayed perfectly still, heart hammering. If she turned on him now, he had no chance. The bear's jaws parted slightly, then closed around the fish. She swallowed it whole. Then, for the first time, she lifted her eyes to meet his. Daniel had expected rage, fear, maybe even desperation. Instead, what he saw shook him to his core. Recognition. Understanding. And then, something even more shocking, trust, The mother bear didn't lunge, didn't growl. Instead, she let out a slow, weary breath, as if acknowledging what he had done. Daniel swallowed hard. She knew. She knew he had her cub. The storm howled around them, but in that frozen moment, something passed between them, something primal, Then, the mother bear did something Daniel would never forget. With the last of her strength, she pushed herself up and took a slow, staggering step toward the cabin. Daniel's breath hitched. She wasn't leaving. She was coming for her cub. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. She was coming. Instinct screamed at him to retreat, to grab the rifle, to barricade himself inside. But something deep inside him, something primal, something human, told him to stay. The mother bear moved with effort, her powerful body weakened by hunger and exhaustion. Every step looked like it took everything she had left. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't roaring. She was pleading. Daniel had spent years in the Arctic, studying its creatures, surviving its wrath. Never had he seen a polar bear behave like this. The cub let out a weak, whimpering cry from inside the cabin. The sound hit the mother like a jolt of electricity. She let out a low, trembling huff, a sound of relief, of longing, of a mother finding her lost child, Daniel stepped back inside the cabin, his movements slow, deliberate. This moment was fragile, he couldn't risk breaking the thin thread of trust between them. The mother bear followed. Not fully inside, just enough to see. Daniel crouched down and gently lifted the cub into his arms. The tiny creature was still weak but stirred as he cradled it against his chest. The mother's massive head lowered, her dark eyes locked onto her baby. Daniel hesitated. This was it, the moment of choice. He could keep the cub, try to raise it, protect it from the brutal Arctic. But that wasn't real protection, was it? This was nature. This was survival, and the cub didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. With a slow, steady movement, Daniel took a breath and stepped forward. And then, he let go, The cub let out a tiny, weak cry as it tumbled forward, landing in the snow just inches from its mother. The bear let out a deep, rumbling sound, a sound of relief, She lowered her massive head, nudging the cub gently, as if making sure it was real. The cub stirred, then pressed into her fur, its tiny body seeking warmth it had almost forgotten. Daniel exhaled, his heart hammering. He had done the right thing. For a long moment, the mother bear stood there, her cub nestled against her. Then, slowly, she turned her gaze back to him. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. She wasn't just looking at him. She was thanking him. A silent understanding passed between them, something ancient, something beyond words. Then, with the last of her strength, the mother bear turned. She took a step away, then another. The cub followed, its tiny paws sinking into the snow. Daniel watched as they disappeared into the Arctic night, swallowed by the endless white. He stood there long after they were gone, the cold biting at his skin. For the first time in his life, he knew he hadn't just witnessed survival. He had witnessed a miracle.